the virtual open day. Thank you, Hannah. So we are Mayhew and Architectural History today, a joint session where our program directors and very grateful to also alumni who will join us in sharing maybe their student experiences with you. If you have any questions about the programs, UCL, and studying in London at large. So before we go into the two programs, I'll introduce the panel very briefly. We are joined here by Barbara Penner and Robin Wilson, who are the co-program directors of MAAH. I am Jane Wong, the program director, co-directing with Edward Dennison, who is unfortunately in Beijing for a conference, so he can't join us today. And of course, we have Rodney, who is the student representative for architectural history, and Deepika, who is the representative for Mayhew. So what will happen in the next half an hour or so is that Barbara, Robin, and I will give everyone an overview of the two programs. And then at the end, you can ask us any questions about program specific things. But also, you can ask Rodney and Deepika about their experience, recommendations, tips, or just, very candid insights into UCL and the two programs. So I guess bearing in mind that a lot of the information we'll be presenting now, you can find online. Make good use of the student voices here because you will not be able to reach them after the presentation today. So on that note, Barbara, do you want to go first or Mayhew goes first? What was the plan? You're muted, Barbara.
Very happy to kick off
Okay,
if that's okay.
perfect.
Um, so as Jane said, I'm Barbara Penner. I co-run the MA Architectural History, MAAH, with Robin Wilson. So you'll see us doing a bit of a double act as we introduce the course, tell you about some of its key features, and then also talk to you a little bit about the ethos of the course as it's developed over the last 3 decades. It's a very long established course. If I could just share my PowerPoint with you all. I hope that's visible. Can someone just give me a thumbs up? Yes, excellent. Okay. The other thing I did just want to highlight is that today you will be hearing from me and from Robin, but we actually represent only a small number of the staff who teach onto this course. You see the full list of names here. And we did just really want to emphasize that this is a team-taught course. We've got many prominent historians and theorists who help deliver the key core modules. And also we have 8 optional modules. I'll talk you through those as well later. But the engagement of this very wide range of staff is really one of the big selling points of the program. Just, I won't go on at length, but just to say that this course was established in 1981. So it is one of the oldest and best known programs of its kind. And it was established not by Rainer Banham, who was one of our most distinguished historians, but very much in keeping with his approach and ethos. And the course is really devoted to the historical and theoretical interpretation of cities, architecture, urban spaces, creative practices, and also their representations. And over the course of its history, the program has really developed to prioritize the exploration of new methods and critical theories as they apply to architectural and urban history. And insofar as it has a defining approach, I would say that it doesn't look at architecture exclusively through the work of famous architects or landmark buildings, but it really tries to critically engage the larger processes that go into the production of the built environment. And those processes can be social, ideological, creative, political, material, technological, and theoretical. So it's not a doctrinaire course. It has a very open and I would say inclusive ethos. So over to Robin.
Thank you. Yeah, so just to describe the basic structure of the course. So it moves from a kind of general survey modules through to more specific modules. So term one, and we're going to explain these in a little bit more detail in a minute, but critical methodologies is a general theory survey module, which takes you through a sequence of critical theories in relation to architecture, and Barbara's going to explain those in a bit. And then research and dissemination, which is the module that I coordinate in term one, is really focused on methodologies of research, and we have a series of visiting speakers and experts in fields who come and talk to us about that, and we have discussions, and students do a range of assignments. And then in term two, there's a range of 8 modules, usually, sometimes less, depending on whether staff are on sabbaticals, but usually 8 modules, from which you would choose 2, and those are much more specific theory guided or historically guided modules into more specific areas. So you're starting to move through and choose your specialisms. You can also audit a third if you feel you could do that. And then by term 3, having done a couple of essays based on the term 2 modules, you're starting to move through to the dissertation module. So the summer term and then across the summer is dedicated to the dissertation. And we have a number of workshops that prepare you for that. And also you're allocated a specialist tutor. So you have a very specialized tailored tutoring across the summer to develop the dissertation. And then that's handed in early to mid-September. So I think that's it for the general structure. Thanks.
Okay. So as Robin says, term 1, we have 2 core modules, which all students take together. The first of these is critical methodologies. This is this year's lineup of subjects. And you see, we talk you through historiography, representation, material culture and anthropology, post-colonialism, and so on. And the aim of this course is really to give students a kind of common ground for knowledge. And our student body does tend to be quite diverse. We have students from art history, for instance, geography. We always have a large number of trained architects. We have students from heritage. So this course is really trying to bring everyone up to speed by introducing key histories, methods, theories, subjects, and objects. But you see, it's very interdisciplinary. So we try to introduce you to a range of subjects. The point isn't that you should become an expert in all of these subjects, but rather we're trying to show the way in which critical theory, for instance, can be applied to architectural history. And so this is one example of the seminar that we do on biopolitics. We ask you to read some of Foucault's lectures on biopolitics. And then through this article by Meredith Tenfor, we try to show you how that theory has been applied, in this case, to a market building in Paris. And so over to Robin for the second core module.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll go through this quite quickly because I know we're going to run out of our 10-minute slot. So research and dissemination. So this takes you through a series of kind of core and more peripheral research methods. So core research methods such as archival research led by the Survey of London, which is a group of historians that also work within the Mayhew course. Next slide, please. There's a talk on exhibitions, which is given by Vicky Richardson, who's the current director, or was previously director of research, director of exhibitions at the Royal Academy, is now an independent curator. Next one, please. We have a talk on photography, which is led by Agnesi Sanvito, who's a London-based photographer. We also have a talk on film. And next slide. And also some more kind of experimental methods, one led on sound by Ian Chambers, a sound artist and composer, and one on community consultation and activism led by Hilary Powell.
Great.
So yeah, the idea is really that different forms of knowledge demand different forms of research, and we really experiment and test that premise through the course of that module.
Yes, and I think overall all of the modules really try to encourage a self-reflexive approach and encourage you to situate yourselves as writers and thinkers. Which leads us to the term 2 modules. We have 8 on offer. For full descriptions, do please look at the website. But just to say, in term 2, we hope we've sort of established a ground in term 1. Term 2 is really an opportunity to plunge in and to explore in greater depth a given theory or method or subject. So you'll just quickly note that in this range of courses, we have several that focus specifically on the history of London, the history of global London, and architecture from the 17th to 20th centuries. We have several courses that look more broadly at urbanism and do so in a global context, including multiple modernities. representation of cities. We also have several courses that engage with new bodies of philosophical and critical theory. So materialist, ecological architecture, and also the history and theory of digital design. And then finally, we have courses that really push the boundaries of critical and creative practice, including practices of criticism and critical spatial practice, site writing. So in this range, you should be able to find something that caters specifically to you.
Just to mention a few of the extracurricular projects and events that we put on. Each year, the students conclude their year with a symposium, which is student-led, and that's held in November. So it's a kind of celebratory event that allows the students to present their work and also to invite people to come in and present alongside them. So this year was refracted geographies. Previously it was called unsorted, and refracted geographies. We had the Deborah Saunt invited to give a talk as the previous founding director of the London School of Architecture. Next slide, please. And we also have a lecture series. We have 4 or 5 lectures in terms 1 and terms 2, sometimes drifting into term 3. This term, it was a series of lunchtime lectures, all from UCL-based researchers talking about their own current research. Thank you. And we also have a field trip. So in the May of each year, we choose a new destination to go on a 3 to 4 day field trip, which isn't directly related to the curriculum, but allows us to explore some of the kind of themes that we've been thinking about through the course within a context. So previous recent trips, last year was to Paris, and then previous to that, Edinburgh. You can see here in Paris, visiting the Centre National de la Danse, which is a converted brutalist building, previously the administrative centre of Pantin. And there on the right, Barbara talking to students in the passages, one of the passages of the 19th century Paris.
And that's it from us. But please do take advantage of Rodney's presence. He was one of the student organizers of this year's symposium, which was excellent. So please do take advantage of him being here to ask any questions about the student experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let me share screen. Bear with me. So I will go full screen. Thumbs up for full screen? Great. Okay. So who are we? Mayhew is a 12-month postgraduate program in the Bartlett School of Architecture. And it's a lovely thing that we're doing this introduction together with MAAH because we actually share some modules in the program. So we'll get on to that. But sort of a general overview. Our remit or our agenda is to enable students to participate and shape a global center for researching and designing for equitable urban futures. And in sort of enabling that conversation and the research and design work, we have a twofold agenda. Firstly, understanding and researching our urban histories through the lens of environmental, racial, and spatial equity. So acknowledging all the contested issues, inequities that have been embedded in our urban fabric, and at the same time acknowledging that as the basis for future urban development, very much responding to the profession and the industry's challenge of having to work with the existing building stock and not taking new builds as a default. So in sort of researching the past, we also projectively in parallel think about design strategies in the practice of urban environment fields. And in this sense, we are quite interdisciplinary and multi-scalar, and that reflects also our student cohort and backgrounds that they come from. So we are a very global collective. Each year we have students from China, India, South America, less so now from Europe, but we're still hoping that we'll get some. But together, this is really an international platform for students to share their lived experiences from home, academic cultures, which are very different from continent to continent, country to country, and also to shape the curriculum based on bibliographies and realms of reference that they carry with them. In the sort of interdisciplinary context, we get a lot of students from different streams of practice. So some come from design, some come from curation, some come from history, some come from politics. And together, this is a platform for everyone to sort of find their own voice and their methodology through a um, year-long investigation with us on various subjects. We are also very much encouraging discourse within and outside of the program. So each year we curate and program events, seminars, and public conferences for students to share their work in progress, but also to engage with researchers and practitioners in the field. Walking is very much part of our learning methodology, which I'm sure Deepika can speak to. And we take that quite seriously in the sense that, yes, it is a joyful occasion usually, but it also aligns very much with the research agendas of Mayhew staff on the program. So in this case here on the screen, this was Kaunis with Edward Dennison talking about modernist heritage in Lithuania. But also, we are very much sited in London, so using London as a laboratory and being embedded in different sites across the two terms in the year. So we're not just interested in sort of canonical buildings similar to MAAH, but also very much interested in everyday spaces in the cities that are overlooked or undervalued. We also are leaders in the school for programming cross-cultural exchange and events that celebrate different times and festivals in the year. We very recently celebrated Diwali, and also each year, the Lunar New Year is a huge event for the school and the faculty. And this is sort of an ethos that we try to embed and encourage. So the wider academic and institutional citizenship is really important for Mayhew students each year. So more about the logistics of how the year looks. It is a 12-month program, so we have 3 terms starting in late September, early October. And what we see on the screen is progressively, you start with many modules and it reduces down to your final project, which is a dissertation-based or hybrid project that has design components. So back to term 1 and term 2. Term 1, we have 3 modules, the first being the one that is hosted by the Survey of London, which is a laboratory set up in 1894 in London that tasked itself with surveying buildings at the brink of demolition over the course of, well, more than a century now. And what is really valuable for us in this context is that students have a direct relationship with researchers at this laboratory and are able to also participate in their ongoing projects, monographs, and surveys of different parts of London. So from this course, you will learn the more technical and skill-based methodologies of surveying, recording, researching different sites and buildings. And then the second module that we see here, issues, is an essay-based module that explores the critical framework of looking at specific urban or building related issues in London or abroad. So this is an opportunity for students to really dive deeper into specific issues that they're interested in through the lens of globalization, cultural heritage, or other themes that might be relevant for the topic. And lastly, in term one, we have the design research module, which is the design module where students explore a part of London, create a design brief for their term two projects. So in term two, if we can speak to the design module for continuity, in design practice, students will be working in groups and in pairs to develop a term-long project based on the work that they've done in term one on a specific area in London. So in this project, the design outputs are not limited to buildings. Some students go on to design urban strategies, landscape projects, or furniture design for specific areas that they have identified. And what complements this is a sort of breathing space, which is the elective module, where students choose a module from anywhere in UCL. It can be from MAAH, for example. It can be from Mayhew. It can be from other parts of the school where students have the opportunity to take time to develop a particular skill or a particular in-depth research based on what is sort of helpful for your journey on Mayhew. In saying this, that is in anticipation of the final project. So the final project is a very self-led piece where students are supervised by one supervisor on the program or elsewhere on a topic and a methodology of your own choice. So this can be something that you are very interested in already, so something that you have been developing at home currently, or something that you have found in your time here in London. So that is the culmination of all of your past interests, life experiences, and also the inspirations and knowledge that you've gained here with us on the program in term one and term two. That leads us to the importance of knowledge exchange and public platforms for sharing Mayhew work. So each year we participate in the Bartlett Autumn Show. So we exhibit projects from students across the three terms. And this is a really lovely opportunity for you to share your work with international and public audiences. We also have the online platform, which will encourage you all to visit. So here you will be seeing final projects from different cohorts from 2021 up to 2024. So you'll get a sense of what students work on in the final term, but then also thinking about whether or not that is something that you are finding inspiration from and are interested in participating. So that aside, outside of UCL, we also host different exhibitions and events, especially with communities and collaborators that we work with throughout the year to ensure that this exchange is not extractive. So we always try to contribute the research work or design work that we've developed in the year with a more local audience each year for that exchange. So a field trip, this is a hot topic usually for prospective students. This is a very carefully curated trip that we embark on each year, usually aligning to research agendas of Mayhew colleagues on the program. So in previous years, we have visited Asmara in Eritrea, which forms part of Edward Denison's research practice. Last year we went to Milan, which was tying to ongoing research and practice work that myself and Zhenya Gupkina have been developing over the years. And each year we bring students to hopefully a context that you're unfamiliar with and develop also live projects on site. So in this case, 3D scanning work and public engagement work that we do with local residents and communities to elevate these voices in research projects that usually less privileged laymen or local voices. So similarly to MAAH, we are blessed by a great team of colleagues across different practices and expertise. So we have colleagues who specialize in history and theory, but also very experienced design tutors coming from schools across the world, from MIT to Michigan to other institutions in the UK. So we won't go into this in detail as you can find out more about the staffing team online. And I guess to allude to maybe some of these projects that are associated with the program, we have a practice-facing project called Co-Designing Space Towards Spatial Justice, which is an online platform that captures the theoretical context for co-design, case studies, best practice, and tools for designers, researchers, local authorities, and community leaders. And MOHA, which is a multi-year project, short for Modern Heritage in the Anthropocene, a series of research projects and a symposium held with different institutions globally, researching on the multiple modernities in Africa that are undervalued or not spoken about. So the two QR codes here will lead you to the respective platforms. You can take a screenshot and look at it in your own time. And lastly, just very quickly, touching on careers and maybe Mayhew trajectories. So many of our students do go on to develop design practices alongside teaching our PhDs, some with an urban focus, others are maybe more local, looking at how different issues intersect with historic preservation, in this case here, health justice and also very much embedding themselves in sustainability research and discourses in the industry, looking at retrofit, how can that interface with questions of preservation, in this case here on the screen, Georgian terraces in London. And also maybe alternative practices, so working in activism and advocacy. Nasima here on the screen has critiqued a UNESCO listing in Fez in Morocco, who has then gone on to now work for UNESCO World Heritage Office. And closer to home, we have Rebecca, who worked on researching on London's, actually, sorry, UK's first Black community-led land trust and is now co-founding and co-leading a campaign that is trying to list the Bridge Park as a site for preservation. So on that note, Instagram is a great way to connect with us, to see what we're up to day to day, week to week. And that's maybe a more informal window to what the program looks like, which might help you to see more live what we're up to throughout the year. So I will stop sharing, and I know that Hannah is still with us, and the chat is available for questions. So Hannah and I will monitor the chat if there are any textual questions, but we're also very much welcoming any of you to switch on your cameras and have a chat with us, especially with Deepika and Rodney, if you have any questions about the two presentations or questions that we might not have covered. So thank you, Hannah. I think we are now all visible to each other. So yeah, so if anyone has a question that you want to raise with video or audio, just raise your hand. We will identify you. Or if you're more comfortable typing in the chat, we will also field those questions there.
Jane,
Yes, Barbara.
if there are no immediate questions, perhaps we could turn over to Rodney and Deepika just to say a few words.
Yes, that would break the ice.
Yeah.
So, Rodney and Deepika, words of wisdom for us.
Shall I go first?
Go for
Is
it,
the audio
Rodney.
okay? Sorry,
Go
is the
for it.
audio okay?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry, I'm sitting in a cafe because my flat does not have Wi-Fi, so we're having fun. No, so I was initially attracted to the architecture and history because in my undergrad, I did my undergrad in architecture in the States, and I had a very cursory kind of dive into history and theory in my undergrad. And I realized that I was really interested in these sort of questions that I couldn't delve deeply into in my practice in the studio side of things, in the design and architecture. But because that's not what my undergrad is very practical in its design of buildings. And that's mainly the reason I just the architecture program is so I could gain those skills in research and just comprehension, basically. Being able to access new ideas and being able to understand those ideas in a way that I could then, I don't know how to, the words are not coming, but basically how I could make my own views from other people's views. And I would say that the architecture curriculum does a very good job of that, because it's not a traditional history course, like Barbara was saying. It is very much focused on understanding how things are done, and that worked out very well for me. So yes, if you want to learn, just traditional architectural history, I would not say that this is the course for you, because it is more theory driven. A little bit more experimental in that way. You're not going to just sit there and learn this building was built then, and then it was built by this person, and then this is what happened to it, yada yada yada. I'll let Deborah talk.
Thanks, Rodney. I'm audible, right? I'm clear. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, why did I take up Mayhew? When you read the brief of the whole Mayhew program on the website, it just called out to me. And then after I came here, yeah, I thought it was made for me. This was the course, and every sentence was like, this is exactly what I want to do. When I came here and met the other people in the cohort, and everyone said the same thing to me. At the final project, all of us were doing a different sort of project. So what this program sort of does is it allows you to build your project or your thought process the way you want it, but within a framework which calls out to everybody of a similar interest. So all of us were doing very different work, but all of us were aligning to that same set of values and same set of ethos. And that was like the best part of Mayhew for me. And there are also so many similarities that way in terms of MAAH, where it's not a very traditional program, because I personally have always been interested in conservation and preservation, but I did not want to pursue a course to become a conservation architect or preservation, because I had my issues with the idea of what preservation means. So if you want to be a conservation or a preservation architect, this is not again the course for you. This really makes you question what that should look like, what preservation should look like. And my interest lied within cultural heritage and intangible heritages within the built structures and within the built heritage. And my background is in pure architecture, undergrad from India, and I practiced for many, many years and had questions on what good architecture should look like and who am I really building for at the end of the day. So the words environmental, spatial, and racial equity was those three words really called out to me on like how do we define good architecture and for who and who gets to define that. And I think Mehu really helped me answer those questions.
Thank you
Okay.
both. Maybe I have a question for both of you, if there are no questions from the floor. What was the most, let's say, unexpected thing that you discovered in your time on MAAH or Mayhew?
If I can go first, sorry, that the most unexpected is that your opinion really matters was something like everyone's opinion really matters in its own context. So to give value to that context was something what I learned or what was the most unexpected for me. That because we all come with the preconceived notion that this kind of architecture is good architecture or this country is doing something better than another country. All those preconceived ideas completely dropped when all of us from different continents were speaking about issues from our own places. Mayhew told us that yes, that is important as well. So it gave us a very equal platform.
Wonderful. And Rodney?
I would say not only does your opinion matter, but also that it changes quite a lot. At least mine did. Because I was able to access new ideas that I hadn't been able to access before, or just hadn't thought to access before because I went to school in the States. So what little history, theory, education I had was from an American context, not a British or European context. I had read quite a few works by Rainer Banham, who did establish the program here. But that was really the only person I recognized from a year of readings. Um, so just being able to access new ideas in a useful way that you can use to shape your own thoughts, I definitely would say is a big advantage to these programs. And the course directors or the course instructors do a really good job being able to understand your interests and the programs that they're teaching and being able to shape your interests or give you additional research to help guide those interests into a proactive place.
Are there any questions from the floor?
There's one in the chat.
Can you read it, Rodney? I can't.
It says, do
see.
you need to have a bachelor's in architecture to apply for Mayhew?
It also says Hannah would like to answer this question.
Sorry. So, for some reason I can't see the chat, so I'll need some assistance here. But
I'll do that.
okay, so with bachelor degree for design, so for Mayhew, it is recommended that you have some form of design training. Although in the past we have accepted students who come from other disciplines, such as political science or architectural history. If you don't have a design background, what we would recommend is that you apply first so that we can review your profile. And then if there's anything that you can supplement that comes from work that you've done outside of school, whether or not it's in practice or, you know, in life at large, that can help you build a portfolio, we welcome that. But it is highly recommended, but not a prerequisite.
Robin, for future further recording for posterity, would you like to just say something about MAAH admissions?
Well, I mean, they're certainly very diverse, and you don't have to have a specialist architectural background by any means. We have people coming from, you know, a range of humanities disciplines, English, often art history, but also people who, you know, have developed an interest in architecture entirely, you know, independently of their academic backgrounds, but more through their own practices and working experience. So we've had a number of people from finance, and somebody who's from the NHS, and so, you know, people develop really interesting sort of tailored projects around their individual interests, and work through the course to kind of augment and expand those interests very interestingly. So we really kind of welcome the diversity in applicants.
Maybe again for Rodney and Deepika. Can you speak to maybe the network or community that you've found here in your time in London, whether or not it's within the program or outside of the program, and maybe how that enabled you to go on other trajectories after the program?
I'll go first. So I was very fortunate in that I very quickly made friends with quite a few people in the cohort. Um, which I'm not an antisocial person, but I'm not necessarily the most social person. So I was very pleased in that because I came all the way from America. So I was a little nervous about completely uprooting my life for a new continent. Um, but no, you very quickly, at least I found, most of us found that we very quickly found friends. And nobody's gonna be in the course, certainly. Because that's just not how people are. And they're definitely people that I still talk to and will continue to talk to in the future. And then you also meet, because of the lecture series, at least, I don't know if you have lecture series in May here. I didn't see anything about it. But at least in MA and the regular lecture series are useful in that you get to see what other people in the school are working on. And they also invite guest speakers, so you get to interact with professionals in the field that may be doing things that you're interested in. I am still currently looking for work at this point in time. My career trajectory is a little bit complicated because I did do a degree in architecture in the States, which isn't quite the equivalent of an architecture degree here. So that definitely set me up a little bit in a weird position. But I would say that if you wanted to exclusively go into an academic field, I could see this being extremely beneficial because eventually I do want to go into an academic field, just not right now. I want to get my degree. I want to get my license in architecture and then look into academia, get a doctorate. So I would say for academia, extremely beneficial. For non-academia, but perhaps even, I don't know. I can only really speak to the architecture aspect. And coming from internationally, it is a little bit more difficult, perhaps. You would think that architects would love somebody who knows how to research and understand new information and translate it into a comprehensible format. Do they? Maybe. I have yet to find that. But I'm persistent, so I'm not going to give up anytime soon. It just might take more time than initially anticipated.
I am quite a social person to start off with, so I did quickly make a lot of friends at Mayhew, who are still like my super close friends right now. We are the bunch, a few of us stayed back in London, so we were a cohort of 27. I'm from the 2022 batch, so I think around 10 of us, 13 of us have stayed back. We catch up every weekend, every week, celebrate every birthday. So I think it's also Mayhew as a classroom was a super safe place that in that year we could really know each other very well. And it's now really nice to have friends all over the country and we do chat quite a bit. what I wish I did more during Mayhew, but it's a bit hard because it's quite hectic and intense. You're already in that, um, you're just constantly thinking about your work. I wish I networked and connected with the outside, like the London workplace, the people who are already working in London a bit more, because the next few months is about making those connections and building those connections in London. And that's also a very interesting thing for me to see about London is everyone's doing such niche work that to find work, you need to really sort of align with what someone else is doing. So it's important to have that face-to-face conversation with um, potential employers or potential collaborators or whatever you might call them. So that it would be nice if I had started it a bit earlier during the program itself. But otherwise, lots and lots of connections because we end up going to so many talks and events and seminars during the program that we do end up meeting a lot of people. But yeah, I think I remember the one time in Mayhew, they had put up the picture in the presentation where in Lithuania, all of us are in a classroom, which doesn't look like a classroom, of course, which just all over the floor, lying on the floor and having our sessions. And it had gotten so emotional that everyone was so safe to talk so deeply about their love for heritage and history and culture. And I think the entire class was in tears at one point, and that's how safe. And yeah, we were all crying listening to other stories of probably demolished buildings, wrong histories, contested histories. So it is a super safe place, I can say. McMahon is super safe that way to make friends, and there's no competition in the classroom whatsoever. There is absolutely no competition, only collaborations.
Thank you both. So we have three questions in the Q&A. The first one is for Mayhew. So it's a question about opportunities to learn about the digital documentation process through this program. And does Mayhew have any research projects where we might have the chance to contribute remotely? So if I'm interpreting this question correctly, digital documentation, that might mean digital survey. We definitely have staff members who directly teach that on the course. So we have the experts for 3D scanning, but also the more traditional aspects of surveying. So that for sure, yes. And then contributing remotely. So we have in the past established projects where we work with global collaborators. That said, usually we establish that relationship first physically. So say, for example, if you study with us on the Mayhew program, for sure, in the future, you will be part of the wider Mayhew community, participating on all sorts of different projects, whether it's mapping, whether it's writing in an academic journal, etc. We have that established now as a platform for remote sort of collaborations and learning. And then we have two questions, and that might apply to both Mayhew and MAAH. So the first question is, what are you looking for in an applicant? And then the second question, which I guess qualifies this question, is how does UCL assess the quality of an applicant's portfolio? Are there specific elements they look for, e.g., design thinking, sustainability, technical skills? Before we answer that question on two programs, maybe just on the second question, the application process is through UCL Central, but the assessment of the portfolio itself is done on a program by program basis. So, other aspects like language requirements, your personal statement, yes, that goes through the main system. But then when it comes to the portfolio, it would be the program directors and admissions tutor reviewing it. So that means that whatever you submit there needs to be very specific to what you're applying for. So instead of being maybe more generic or comprehensive, really think about how your portfolio aligns with the program you apply for. So I've spoken a lot, so maybe I hand over to Barbara and Robin to answer the first question. What are you looking for in an applicant?
I can do that because I'm running the admissions for MA Architectural History. Well, initially, I mean, just an awareness of the course that you're applying to make sure that that you are applying to the right kind of course for you, and you have an awareness of the kind of skills that you'll require on it. So just to make sure that you have a look at the course web pages on the UCL website. But other than that, I mean, it's really about a sense of a personal passion, a sense of project. I think that's really important, and a kind of not a deep awareness of the field, but a kind of an initial starting point of reading that you might have done, taking on something from previous phase of academia to develop further, a sense of trajectory in your career, and how the course might facilitate you moving towards that. But it's also kind of an openness, I think, to learning diversely, and an openness to collaboration and working together within a group. We don't do design projects in the way that Mayhew do, but we do collaborative projects, particularly in research and dissemination. And there's an awful lot of work that's done through the act of thinking and talking together in seminars. So that's a very collaborative venture.
That's beautiful. I guess we share a lot of that. Thank you, Robin, for answering partly. For Mayhew, the only thing that I would maybe supplement is that the program is slightly more projective in saying that we are looking for students or prospective students who are driving changes in their communities, would want to be agents of change, or will become global leaders. And when we say that, we don't mean loud leaders. We also, welcome, quiet leaders, or, leaders of big or small things. So what we really would like to know from your application, similar to what Robin has just said, is that we would like to see what you might develop in your final project. So what potential projects you're interested in, what personal agenda that you're bringing from home. You might not know 100%, what that is, but then an instinct for it or an inkling is very helpful for us to see how you might evolve on the program. For many applicants, we tend to describe this as, like it's almost pitching for your PhD. So your little blurb for what you might want to do in a 12-month course, and thinking of that maybe as a precursor to something bigger. So, 12 months is very short. With a blink of an eye, you graduate from the programs. But then as a launch pad, it will allow you to do other things, whether it's at home or here in London, or actually initiatives that you've already started that you want to grow bigger. So yeah, I think on that note, we don't have more questions in the chat. Does anyone want to ask questions live with audio or video? We are reaching the 2 o'clock mark. I don't see any hands. Yeah, maybe Hannah. Okay, Hannah is thanking everyone in the chat. So you know how to find us. The other person that is critical for the two programs is Drew Pessoa. His contact details are on both of our program websites. If you have any administrative questions in the process of making the application, you can reach out to him as well as the central admissions team. But we look forward to seeing some applications from today, and we hope you found it useful. And thank you so much, Rodney and Deepika, for giving us your time and sharing all of that. Lovely to see you both. Yeah, so Hannah, maybe we hand over to you to close it off.
So thank you for attending, everyone. As I said in the chat, you'll be receiving a recording of this session in the next week or two, along with some other useful information. But in the meantime, any other questions, do get in touch. But thank you for your time today, and all the panelists and our alumni too.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
Bye.
all. Bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Rodney.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deepika.
Thank you.